Hi guys, Tablet-News.com, and I'm here with the Nexus 7 2013 for a full review. This is the brand new version of the Nexus 7 that Asus and Google have created together, the second generation. It was launched this summer, and last summer we already reviewed the first Nexus 7, so it's time to check up this follow-up. The price tag of this device is $229 on Amazon, and of course we're talking here about the 16GB version. This is a 7-inch tablet that runs Android 4.3 Jelly Bean, and let's have a look at the design. So we're dealing with a matte black back. We got solid build quality, and the case here is a soft touch polycarbonate shell, very nice to the touch. This device is 8.7mm thick. It weighs 290 grams and is 50 grams lighter than the Nexus 7 from last year. It's also 1.5 millimeters longer than the model from last year. It's 6 millimeter narrower, as you can see, it's much narrower, and 1.8 millimeter thinner. By the way, you can also fit this device in the pocket of a jacket if you want to, because it's so narrow. Speaking of narrow, you can see that the screen bezel is actually very narrow from the sides, but the lower and upper area above and below the screen is pretty big, so the superior and lower bezels are pretty big. Asus and Google have cut 2.75 millimeters on each side of the screen, and sadly those two big bezels are spoiling the fun here just a little bit. This is a 16:10 aspect ratio tablet. It's rather panoramic. It's ideal for watching movies and playing games. And another thing to mention here is the pair of stereo speakers. We got a full set of speakers here, and two here interrupted by the micro USB port. At the back we find the 5-megapixel camera integrated into the corner area. At the top we have the audio jack right here. At the bottom we find the micro USB port between those speakers I mentioned earlier, and the buttons are found on the right side of the device. You can see volume buttons here and on-off button here, and here what looks to be a microphone hole, if I'm not mistaken. And then we move to the front, where we find the front camera and the ambient light sensor here somewhere. At the bottom we find the notification light right here below the area where the home button is shown on the screen. So right here is the notification light. Okay, this is an elegant and slim tablet. As you saw, it sits very well in the user's hand. If need be, you can even use it with a single hand, only if need be. Okay, we move further to the hardware. The design we got out of the way, elegant and slim. What you see here is a 7-inch screen. This one is an IPS LCD with a huge resolution for a small tablet, 1920 over 1200 pixels, 60 million colors, 323 ppi, so a very impressive screen indeed. Inside we have a quad-core CPU inside the Nexus 7 2013. This CPU is a quad-core Snapdragon S4 Pro with a clock speed of 1.5 GHz. However, this CPU uses new cores. It uses Cryte 300 cores, not Cryte 200. So theoretically, some people may say this is very close to a Snapdragon 600. We got a 5-megapixel camera at the back, 1.2-megapixel camera at the front, and the Adreno 320 GPU inside. Moving even further, we find 16 or 32 GB of storage inside, depending on the version you want to purchase for this device. There's also 2 GB of RAM DDR3L inside. We also get dual band Wi-Fi on board, and by the way, there is also an LTE version of this model out there. We get your usual NFC, we get GPS, we get Bluetooth 4.0 and an accelerometer. Of course, there is also a gyroscope available here, proximity sensor, and the micro USB comes with support for slim port technology, and it allows you to connect to a TV set or screen. By the way, this device also comes with support for wireless charging via the QI technology. Speaking of charging, it's time to check out the battery performance. I have a bunch of screenshots here that will enlighten you. Okay, here we go. A lot of screenshots to take into account. So let me first explain what's happening here. We have a battery with a capacity of 3950 mAh. It's a lower capacity than the last year Nexus 7 that had a capacity of 4325 mAh. The new Nexus 7 uses a 15 Wh battery compared to the old 16 Wh battery. It takes 3 hours to charge the battery fully, and now ASUS and Google have developed a way to lower consumption in the idle mode with 50% compared to the last year Nexus 7. Well, in our tests we used up 12% of the battery life, taking 70 pictures and videos, and then you can see it's at 88% when starting to play a concert at 5:23, and playing the concert some more we reach 33% at 8:53. So in 2 hours, in 3 hours and a half of playing concerts in full HD on this tablet with 50% brightness, we used 55% of the battery life. The rest of 33% were used playing FIFA 14. So overall you should get about 7 hours of video playback from the tablet, once again with 50% brightness and Wi-Fi on. It's below the iPad mini, but you will get a full day of use of this device if you know how to manage it. The Nexus 7 from 2012 gave you 9 hours of video, this one gives you 7. However, the Nexus 7 from this year will provide you with more web browsing battery life than the one from last year, and its idle mode functioning is much more efficient. Okay, now time to test the audio side. I'm going to rely on SoundCloud for that. And what we have here is a free track that I'm going to press play on. Okay, now some conclusions. What we're dealing with here is a set of stereo speakers, especially when the device is held in portrait. Speakers here and speakers here. Of course, the volume is very good, as you heard, and since the edges are slightly curved when you're going to place the tablet on a surface, it will not muffle the speakers. However, you may think that by holding the tablet with your hands like this, you may muffle them. Well, guess what? You're not muffling them. I've seen other reviews complaining that if you hold the tablet like this, you cover the speakers. Even if you cover them, the sound will not feel muffled at all. Okay, the speaker quality is very good. We get a clear voice, you heard that earlier, and aside from the clear voice you get high volume, although it can compare to the Nexus 10. The bass could be a little bit better, but the volume is superior to the iPad mini and the Nexus 7, so excellent quality, aside from the bass maybe. Okay, so it's time to test the video quality. For that I'm going to exit the gallery. I have a trailer here for you. And here it is. It's Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs Part 2. This is a 7-inch IPS LCD with a resolution of 1920 over 1200 pixels. The colors are very vivid. There is no oversaturation in spite of the tendency to do so for other screens on other tablets. The viewing angles are very good, as you can see. They're not affected by tilting the tablet in vertical or horizontal. We have great contrast. And the behavior in full sunlight is also very good. I'm very impressed by the brightness and the contrast and the viewing angles especially. Of course, this is an IPS, so it was expected that the viewing angles would be good. Okay, so as I said, vivid colors and the brightness. We also have some samples here. We have a special instrument, it's called a lux meter. It measures the number of lux units that your device's screen emits. As you can see, we got to 508 nits. That's the brightness, 508 lux, excuse me. So we achieved 508 lux units on the white, and between 0 and 1 lux units on a black background. This beats pretty much any tablet we tested over the last year, so it's a very impressive brightness, especially on white and also especially on black. The most powerful device when it comes to brightness I have ever played with was the HTC One, and it also gravitated around 500 nits units. So impressive brightness. Right now we're sitting at, as you can see, about 50% of the brightness. If you turn it all the way up, the screen seems washed out, but that's not the case. Outdoor visibility is good, text contrast is good, general contrast is good. By the way, the text is very crisp. You don't even have to zoom to be able to read articles, which is something you usually do on 7-inch tablets. You tend to zoom in, but here everything is much more crisp, courtesy of the high resolution and this nifty IPS panel. By the way, the density is 323 ppi. It's huge for a 7-inch tablet. Okay, now we're going to analyze the camera. 5-megapixel camera. I have this little guy here, as usual, trying to set it up. Going to take a picture. As you can see, we have touch to focus. It may not be the fastest in the world, but you'll be surprised to see the results. So we got this little snail guy here. Here's the picture. As you can see, it's quite decent. Real thing and picture. Considering we're taking this picture indoors with no particular options available. Speaking of options, I have to say this is a 5-megapixel camera with autofocus and the ability to capture full HD 30 FPS video. We got face detection, and we got the typical UI available for devices with Android 4.2 and up. In order to trigger the options, you simply have to keep the screen pressed. Then you can play with the exposure, for example, or you can play with other settings that include the location, or maybe you want a countdown timer, maybe you want to change the picture size, white balance options with daylight, auto, fluorescent, incandescent, or maybe you want to go to the scene modes, sunset, and a variety of other scene modes to play with. Okay, other than that, we have the usual picture taking modes: picture taking, filming, panorama, and photosphere available on this device. This camera is actually a pleasant surprise. Let me show you some samples. I was really surprised by it, wasn't expecting so much quality. So you may think that these roses are oversaturated. Well, actually they're not. That was their real color. Keep in mind, this camera has no flash, so all you're seeing here are pictures taken in a cloudy day, very cloudy day. It's October after all. The colors are vivid but not oversaturated, and we even pulled a 360 photosphere. That actually looks pretty decent. Stitching up images, of course, there is the occasional problem like this one, but it's rather caused by us than the software. So 360 panorama looking great. Let's see a video. Here we go. The colors are natural, the brightness is good. The pictures are taken with a resolution of 2592 over 1944 pixels. There is no HDR, there is no ISO, in case you're wondering, and the video is taken in full HD 30 frames per second with continuous autofocus that's slightly exaggerated, and the resulting files have a bitrate of 12 mega per second. The audio capture is done in mono as far as I know, and overall, as I said, the camera was a pleasant surprise. You'll get more samples in the full review once the text review is all done. You should also know that you can do some picture editing, of course on a basic level. However, that basic level has evolved a lot in the latest Android releases. You can apply some filters: vintage, black and white, bleach, instant, latte, or you can add some frames. Everything happens in a very intuitive way. You can crop, straighten, rotate or mirror, and then there is a variety of effects like vignette that you can apply or change the contrast or simply play with the shadows. So actually the editing option from the standard Android has evolved quite a lot over the past years. Okay guys, time to do some web browsing, excuse me. Let's go to our sister site, gsmdown.com. Pretty fast, as you can see. Comfy keyboard, by the way, and then let's go to Tablet News. Once again, very fast browsing. The text is crisp, everything is okay. The options right here with incognito tab and a bunch of settings available here. Let's see it in portrait mode as well. Looking fine just as well. Just clicked on an ad by mistake. Okay, so as you can see, very fast browsing experience, no objection here. And now it's time to check out the big bad benchmarks. Go into the screenshots area. We've taken quite a lot of them, and if you want to know the devices that are used as a comparison term for this device, well, I chose the Nexus 7 from last year and the Galaxy Note 8.0 from Samsung. So the Nexus 7 2013 scored 4,758 points. We beat the Nexus 7 from last year, obviously, by about 1,000 points, but we got beaten by the Galaxy Note 8.0 by about 2,000 points. Moving further to Antutu, the new Antutu, here we got 20,000 points. We obviously beat the last year Nexus 7 by double the score, and the Galaxy Note 8.0 achieved only 17,000 points. In Nanomark, 58.6 frames per second, we beat the Nexus 7 from last year by about 3 frames, and the Galaxy Note 8.0 beat us, but it has a lower resolution and a bigger screen, so it's not that relevant. In Velamo, 1593 got beaten by the Nexus 7 from last year and by the Note 8.0 with 200 points and 500 points respectively. Moving further, as you can see, we tried the 3 versions of the 3D Mark. The first one we maxed out, the second one, the extreme one, we scored 7,000 points, and the ultimate one, 10,000 points. We're going to consider 10,000 points. By the way, the Nexus 7 from last year scores 3,200 and the Galaxy Note 8.0 3,100. Finally, speaking of browser earlier, not so impressive, 2,095 points in Browser Mark 2.0. After seeing the iPhone 5s score 3,000 and more points, I'm not impressed by this score at all. By the way, you probably should know that the devices I mentioned earlier have different quad-core CPUs. Nexus 7 from last year had a Tegra 3, this one has a Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 quad-core, and the Galaxy Note 8.0 has an Exynos. Okay, you probably want to know how this device behaves after playing a lot of games. I for one have played a lot of FIFA 14 on it. Then I took a thermometer and guess what? 32 degrees Celsius at the back of the device, which is pretty reasonable, especially since this is not a cold aluminum device, and frankly speaking, even after hours of gaming, the device will not get hot at all. I should probably mention that we're running Android 4.3 Jelly Bean here, as confirmed here, Android 4.3, and this version of Android brings restrictions to multiple accounts. So if you have multiple users on your device, like I have here, you can create some restrictions for their profile, like this one. You can restrict their access to settings, to various applications, and by the way, you can alternate between accounts straight from the lock screen. So I can go to this account here, and you'll see that he only has access to certain apps, as opposed to yet another user profile here, another wallpaper, and another bunch of apps, and finally the main account, this one that you can unlock with a special password, so the other members, the other users won't have access to your main features and main apps. That's basically the idea of the restrictions to the multiple accounts feature. Okay, other than that, Android 4.3 comes with advanced visuals thanks to OpenGL 3.0 support. You also get 32-bit floating point, Bluetooth Smart, LE, and dial pad autocomplete, among others. And there's also a technology that allows Wi-Fi scanning that takes place more now. So more Wi-Fi scanning means that you can keep scanning via Wi-Fi without connecting to a network in order to improve the location accuracy. By the way, Android 4.3 also brings 4K resolution support and slight improvements to the photosphere features. It's not a major update, the features aren't hugely updated like the previous versions, and Android 4.3 also brings an interesting feature. It's called F-Stream, and F-Stream will resolve all the problems with the controller for the eMMC memory that will see the memory full all the time. It's an interesting concept. So we have a controller for the internal memory of the device, its storage, and even though you delete stuff from the storage, that controller may sometimes see the memory as occupied. Well, that problem has been solved thanks to the F-Stream that comes with Android 4.3, and the controller finally behaves nice. By the way, Nexus 7 2013 has a pretty accurate GPS in case you're wondering, and of course we still have the features from Android 4.2, and those include lock screen widgets. You can add lock screen widgets if you want. Here are some of them, like the calendar, digital clock, Google Keep, and other stuff like that. Aside from the home screen widgets, the previous version also brought resizable widgets that will fit to the screen properly. So let's say we have this screen here and we want to fit a widget, let's say a bigger one from currents. Theoretically there's no room here, but as you can see they're resizing and moving around according to this widget, which is pretty cool. Other features are the two famous pull down areas, one for the connectivity toggles, settings, brightness, airplane mode, and one for the notifications. This is a feature I didn't always like on Android 4.2. And now moving further with the review, let's get to the app list and see what apps we have pre-installed on the Nexus 7 2013. Of course, we also installed some benchmarks. We have your usual calculator, the calendar, and Chrome as the default browser, plus Google Currents, allowing you to browse around. We got sources like ABC News, we got a breaking stories section, we have a lifestyle section. You also have the ability to add subscriptions, access only certain areas of expertise like science and technology, like sports, lifestyle. You also have the ability to sync, and you're offered some settings. So overall I see this as a flipboard alternative if you want. Flip around articles, and that was Google Currents pre-installed on the device. We also have Google Drive that allows you to cooperate with other users, open up a document, they will see that document as well. So no problem here. Okay, and aside from that, there's also G+ Photos, which is a special separate app for Google+ Photos, now externalized, so to say. Of course there's Google Earth, but I'm not surprised. Google Earth was also pre-installed on the Nexus 7 2012. This time it has evolved. It comes with that lower area showing you all the landmarks near you, all the things you can see in your area, and more. And aside from Currents, Drive, Google Earth, G+ Photos, we got your usual Gmail with emails categorized thanks to the colored folders. Of course we got Google Plus if you want to socialize. And aside from Google Plus, there's also an app called Keep pre-installed on the device. If you want to add a quick note, a quick reminder, you can type it in here. You can also color code it, and you can record something. You can speak to record or take a photo. So basically you create a quick multimedia note and store it for later and sync it with your other devices. Then there's the suite that's famous here. There's Play Games, Play Books, and Play Music. Before that there's Maps, obviously. As I said, pretty fast GPS syncing on this device and pretty fast app overall, and by the way, pretty fast tablet, in case you were wondering what a Qualcomm quad-core Snapdragon tablet behaves in a new generation. Well, it's fast, it has no lag and no problem. Back to the Play applications. Okay, we got Play Books. So you can start to read now or go to the shop. You can find some books recommended to you. And as I said, if you are to read one of the books, you're going to also use this application. We got a free sample, and that's how the e-reading is done. And some of the options included here, you can see we got a theme, day or night, typeface that we can change, text alignment, we can change brightness, font size, line height, and also you can buy the full book, share it, add a bookmark, some settings in here. So that's basically the e-reading experience on this 7-inch tablet. And moving even further, we got play games that will show you the popular games, featured games, popular games in multiplayer, and your profile with all your games, recent games, installed games, everything you played lately, your friends, other players, and recommended games. So it's sort of like a Game Center rival. Game Center is on iOS and this is the rival here. Okay, and play music you already know. So it's time for that time of the review where we set up the pros and cons for buying or not buying the tablet. This is the Nexus 7 2013. We like the audio very much. It has speakers on both sides, on both edges. The speakers are very loud. The screen is superb. You saw earlier, it's one of the brightest devices. We tested all year. It gets past 500 lux units. The Android update will perform fast on this tablet. You will be the first or among the first to receive Android 4.4, Android 5.0, whatever the next version is. The battery life is bigger now in idle mode and also bigger when doing some web browsing, for example. I like the device's narrow design. It's slim and comfy for the average user. And let's see what else. The price is reasonable, $229. It has a surprisingly good camera, as I said earlier, and those are of course all the pros, and it's a clear improvement compared to the Nexus 7, another pro. On the con side, we have the big bottom and top bezels that make the big ugly. There's no micro SD card slot. There's less video playback time offered by the battery, which can be a bummer for some people. There's not enough bass offered by the speakers. There's no HDR or ISO in the camera settings, and the back tends to get dirty quite easily, especially greasy. Okay, now the grades. It's getting some good grades. 9.3 out of 10 for the design. It loses points in the bezels area here. And for the hardware, 9.5 out of 10. It loses points for the battery just a little bit. And finally, operating system and user interface, it gets a 9.8 out of 10, and only because I do not like the fact we have two drop down areas. The final grade is 9.53 out of 10 for the Nexus 7 2013. We thank ASUS for letting us test this device. It's a solid buy, it's got a solid price, very nice design, very comfy, and a pleasant surprise, the camera. That's it from Tablet-News.com. Bye bye. 9.53 out of 10.